You won't believe how I decided to change my will, turning their laughter into silence, as if a storm had swept through the room. It all started one Thursday evening, around the dinner table, where you'd think family ties are celebrated, not betrayed. My children, Timothy and Laura, sat there, indulging in the traditional meatloaf I'd baked, a family favorite, completely oblivious to the simmering hurt below my composed demeanor. "You see," they whispered behind my back, mocking how I had to pause to remember names, their pity masked in laughter. It hurt more than they could ever imagine. Of course, back when I was growing up in the Midwest, family suppers were sacred. My parents instilled in me the values of loyalty and respect, values I fiercely tried to uphold through every corn on the cob passed under these same chandeliers. But here we were, decades later, and I felt like a stranger to my own legacy. My memory, though not as sharp as it once was, held enough stories to fill volumes of novels that they dismissed as mere forgetfulness. Every Sunday, I'd find solace in my garden, tending the roses just as my mother did. Those roses witnessed the gentle hum of my husband's laughter and the first steps of my children. Yet now they overshadowed the growing chasm between what once was and what is. And each time I pruned the petals, I wished to trim away the thorns of indifference that now seemed to decorate my family's conversations. My home, filled with cherished antiques and black and white photographs, whispered stories of a time when love was unbreakable, not ridiculed. The moment I decided to change my will came unexpectedly, like a late autumn gust sweeping through. It was not an act of revenge, but a declaration of self-respect. The love I stored in those fragile memories was something they would learn to cherish or regret losing. This was not just about inheritance. It was about honoring my journey, my struggles and triumphs, even if my own children had forgotten what those were meant to be. This is the story of how I reclaimed my narrative, teaching them that the strength of a woman like me cannot be summed up in forgotten names. If you too believe in standing tall against silent ridicule and unappreciated sacrifices, then subscribe for the journey of justice and dignity, because every story deserves to be told in full light. As I sat there, pen in hand, the weight of my decision to change my will settling into my bones, I couldn't help but replay the countless moments that had led me to this point. The laughter of my children, Timothy and Laura, still echoed in my mind, each chuckle a sharp jab at the fragility they perceived in me. "She doesn't even remember our names," they had whispered behind my back, their voices dripping with a mix of pity and amusement, as if my age had stripped me of my worth. But they didn't know the half of it. They didn't know the strength it took to keep this family together after their father passed, to hold on to the values I was raised with in the heart of the Midwest, where family meant everything. They didn't see the countless nights I spent worrying over bills, or the mornings I woke up early to tend to the garden just to keep a piece of their grandmother's memory alive in those roses. No, all they saw was a woman whose memory faltered, a woman they could mock without consequence. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The house around me creaked softly, as if it too bore the weight of the memories I held so dear. This old Victorian, with its peeling paint and worn wooden floors, was more than just a home. It was the heart of my family's story. Every scratch on the dining table told a tale of laughter and tears. Every black and white photograph on the mantel captured a moment of love that I thought would last forever. This house was my sanctuary, my legacy, the one thing I had poured my soul into preserving after my husband, George, left us too soon. It wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the embodiment of every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd nurtured for my children. And now, it felt like a battlefield, a place where my own flesh and blood turned against me with their careless words and dismissive glances. Timothy, my eldest, was the worst of the two. At 38, he carried himself with an air of entitlement that grated on my nerves. He had always been ambitious, even as a boy, always wanting more than what we could give. Back then, I admired his drive, the way he'd spend hours in his room sketching out plans for his future, dreaming of a life beyond our small town. But somewhere along the way, that ambition twisted into something darker, greed, plain and simple. He saw this house not as a home, but as a paycheck, a piece of property to be sold off the moment I was gone. I'd overheard him once, on the phone with some real estate buddy of his, talking about how much the place could fetch on the market. "Once the old lady's out of the picture," he'd said, his voice cold and calculating, "we'll split the profits. She won't even notice if we start the paperwork early." My heart had stopped in that moment, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. He didn't even have the decency to wait until I was gone to start carving up my legacy. Laura, my youngest, wasn't much better, though her cruelty came in a softer, more insidious form. At 35, she was the one who smiled to my face, pretending to care, while her eyes betrayed her impatience. She'd sit with me sometimes, sipping tea in the kitchen, asking about my day as if she genuinely wanted to know. But I could hear the undercurrent in her voice. The way she'd sigh when I took too long to answer. The way she'd exchange knowing looks with Timothy when I stumbled over a word. She wasn't driven by greed like her brother. No, Laura's poison was resentment. I think she blamed me for the life she didn't have, for the dreams she never chased because she felt tethered to this family, to me. "You're so lucky to have us around, Mom," she'd say, her tone saccharine, but I knew what she meant. She thought I was a burden, a weight holding her back from whatever glamorous life she imagined she deserved. Her laughter at my forgetfulness wasn't as loud as Timothy's, but it stung just as much, if not more, because it came wrapped in a false kindness. And then there was Laura's husband, Mark, who hovered on the edges of this family drama like a shadow. He was a quiet man, unassuming at first glance, with a habit of avoiding conflict at all costs. I'd always liked Mark. He'd been good to Laura in the early years of their marriage, and he'd helped out around the house after George passed, fixing leaky pipes and mowing the lawn without complaint. But over time, I noticed how he'd shrink away whenever Timothy or Laura started in on their little jabs at me. He'd look down at his plate, or suddenly find a reason to step outside, anything to avoid taking a stand. I couldn't blame him entirely. Standing up to Timothy was like trying to stop a freight train, and Laura had a way of turning any disagreement into a personal attack. But Mark's silence hurt all the same. He was a facilitator, someone who could have spoken up, could have reminded my children of the respect I deserved, but chose instead to stay out of it. His weakness made their cruelty possible, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment every time I saw him avert his eyes. It wasn't just the big moments of betrayal that wore me down. It was the small, everyday slights, the microaggressions that piled up like dust on the shelves of this old house. Like the way Timothy would interrupt me mid-sentence, waving a hand as if my words were irrelevant, saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll handle it. You just rest." Or how Laura would offer to help with something as simple as setting the table, only to mutter under her breath, "It's faster if I do it myself," when I fumbled with the silverware. These weren't grand acts of malice, but they were cuts nonetheless, tiny wounds that bled me dry over time. Each one was a reminder that they saw me as less than I was, as someone to be managed rather than respected. And every time I tried to assert myself, to remind them of the woman I used to be, the woman who raised them single-handedly after their father's death, they'd exchange those looks, those smirks, as if to say, "She's lost it. Poor thing." I found solace in the garden, as I always had. Those roses, passed down from my mother, were my confidants. My silent witnesses to the pain I couldn't voice. I'd kneel in the dirt, my hands stained with soil, and talk to them as if they could hear me. "They don't understand, do they?" I'd whisper, pruning away dead petals with a tenderness I wished I could still show my children. "They don't see how much I've fought for them." The roses never answered, of course, but their presence was enough. They reminded me of a time when love was simple, when family meant unity, not division. They were a symbol of everything I'd tried to build, everything I was now fighting to protect. This garden, this house, they were my heart, and I'd be damned if I let Timothy and Laura tear them apart without a fight. But I wasn't alone in this struggle, not entirely. There was Eleanor, my dearest friend since childhood, who lived just a few streets over. Eleanor had always been my rock, the one person who truly understood the weight of the life I'd led. We'd grown up together in the Midwest, sharing secrets over lemonade on her porch. And even now, in our golden years, she was the one I turned to when the world felt too heavy. One crisp autumn afternoon, I walked over to her house, the leaves crunching underfoot, my heart aching with the need to unburden myself. She greeted me at the door with a warm smile, her gray hair tied back in a neat bun, and ushered me into her cozy kitchen. The smell of freshly baked apple pie filled the air, a comforting reminder of simpler times. "Margaret, you look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said, setting a slice of pie in front of me. "What's going on with those kids of yours?" I sighed, wrapping my hands around the warm mug of tea she'd poured. "It's Timothy and Laura, Eleanor. They laugh at me, behind my back, sometimes even to my face. They think I'm too old, too forgetful to notice. Timothy's already talking about selling the house once I'm gone. And Laura, she just resents me for existing, I think. I don't know how it got to this point." Eleanor's face softened, but there was a fire in her eyes. "That's not right, Margaret. You've given them everything. Your time, your love, your home. They've got no right to treat you like that. What are you going to do about it?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. I've decided to change my will. I'm not leaving the house to them, not like this. I need to make them understand that respect isn't optional, that my life isn't something they can just dismiss. Eleanor nodded slowly, her expression one of quiet approval. "That's a bold move, my friend. But sometimes bold is the only way to get through to people like that. You've got to stand up for yourself, even if it hurts them to hear it. You've earned that much." Her words stayed with me as I walked home, the autumn wind biting at my cheeks. I knew she was right. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about dignity, about reclaiming the narrative of my life before it was too late. But even as I steeled myself for the fight ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Timothy and Laura's behavior than I understood. There were hints, little clues in their words and actions, that suggested something deeper at play. The way Timothy kept checking his phone during dinner, as if waiting for a call or message. The way Laura's eyes darted to him whenever the subject of the house came up, as if they shared a secret I wasn't privy to. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew there was something they weren't telling me, something that went beyond mere greed or resentment. The true extent of their betrayal came to light a few weeks later, on a rainy Sunday evening. I'd been in the living room, sorting through old photo albums, when I overheard Timothy and Laura talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but the house was old, and sound traveled easily through the thin walls. I crept closer, my heart pounding, unable to resist the pull of their hushed tones. "We can't keep waiting, Laura," Timothy was saying, his voice sharp with impatience. "She's not going to last forever, and we need to secure the deal before someone else swoops in. I've already got a buyer lined up for the house. They're offering way above market value if we can close by next month." Laura's response was quieter, but no less chilling. I know. But we have to be careful. If she finds out we've been planning this for months, she'll never sign over the deed. We need to keep her in the dark until it's too late." I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands trembling as I clutched the photo album to my chest. They weren't just talking about selling the house after I was gone. They were actively plotting to take it from me now, while I was still alive. Months, Laura had said. Months of scheming, of pretending to care, all while they worked to strip me of the one thing I had left. My home. My legacy. I was about to step into the kitchen, to confront them with the fury boiling inside me, when Timothy's next words stopped me cold. "Honestly, it's almost too easy. She doesn't even remember our names half the time. She's so out of it, she won't notice a thing until it's done. Poor old Mom, living in the past while we build our future." His laughter, joined by Laura's softer chuckle, was the final blow. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. A deliberate attempt to tear down everything I was, everything I'd fought for. I stood there, frozen, as their words echoed in my mind, each one a dagger to my heart. They thought I was weak, helpless, a relic to be discarded. But they were wrong. They didn't know the strength I still had, the fire that burned beneath the surface of my quiet demeanor. I turned away from the kitchen, my resolve hardening with every step. This was no longer just about changing my will. This was war, a battle for my dignity, for the memory of the family I'd once believed in. They thought they could silence me, erase me from my own story. But I was Margaret Elizabeth Harper, and I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. I'd show them that a woman like me, forged in the heart of the Midwest, tempered by loss and love, couldn't be broken so easily. They'd learn to respect me, or they'd lose everything they thought they were entitled to. The storm they'd laughed about was coming, and I was at the center of it, ready to reclaim my narrative once and for all. As I stood there in the dim hallway, the photo album still pressed against my chest, the echoes of Timothy and Laura's laughter reverberated in my mind like a cruel taunt. My legs felt heavy, as though the weight of their betrayal had rooted me to the spot. But inside, a fire was kindling, a fire I hadn't felt in years. They thought I was weak, a fading shadow of the woman I once was, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the wall, the cool plaster grounding me as I made a silent vow. This wasn't just about the house anymore, or even the will. This was about respect, about reclaiming the dignity they'd stripped from me with every smirk and whispered jab. I would not let them rewrite my story, not without a fight. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a crisp, clean air that seemed to sharpen my resolve. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, staring at the worn wooden surface where I'd fed my children, helped with homework, and shared countless meals with George. This table, like the house itself, was a witness to my life, a life they were so eager to erase. I knew I couldn't confront them head-on just yet. I needed a plan, a way to make them see that I wasn't the feeble old woman they thought I was. Changing the will was the first step, but it wouldn't be enough on its own. I needed to show them I was still in control, that I could still wield power over the legacy they so coveted. I spent the morning on the phone with my lawyer, a kind man named Henry, who'd been handling my affairs since George passed. His voice was steady and reassuring as I explained my decision to alter the will. "Margaret, I'll have the paperwork drawn up by the end of the week," he said. "But are you sure you want to exclude Timothy and Laura entirely? That's a big step. It might cause tension." "Tension is already here, Henry," I replied, my voice firmer than I expected. "They've made it clear they don't respect me. I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it to protect what matters. If they want to be part of this family, they'll have to earn it." Henry sighed, but I could hear the understanding in his tone. "All right, Margaret. I'll make sure everything's in order. You just let me know if you change your mind." I wouldn't change my mind. Not this time. After hanging up, I turned my attention to the garden, my sanctuary. Kneeling among the roses, I let the familiar rhythm of pruning and weeding calm my nerves. The soil was damp from the previous night's rain, and the scent of earth mingled with the faint sweetness of the blooms. I whispered to the roses as I worked, just as I always did. They think they've won, but they don't know me. Not really. I've fought harder battles than this. The roses, as always, listened in silence, their thorns a reminder that beauty and strength often go hand in hand. The day passed quietly, but I knew the storm was coming. Timothy and Laura were due to visit that evening, as they often did on Sundays, under the pretense of checking in on me. I could already predict their routine. Timothy would stride in with that impatient energy of his, barely hiding his disdain, while Laura would offer her saccharine smiles, her eyes betraying the resentment beneath. And Mark, poor Mark, would linger in the background, avoiding eye contact as always. I prepared myself as best I could, setting the table with the old china plates George and I had bought for our 10th anniversary. If this was to be a battlefield, I would at least fight on my own terms, surrounded by the symbols of the life I'd built. They arrived just after 6, the sound of Timothy's heavy footsteps echoing through the house as he let himself in without knocking. "Hey, Mom," he called, his tone clipped as he shrugged off his coat. "Smells like you've been cooking again." Hope it's not too much trouble for you." The jab was subtle, but it was there, a reminder of how little he thought of me. Laura followed behind, her smile tight as she leaned in to kiss my cheek. "You look tired, Mom. Are you sure you're okay? We can order something if you're not up to cooking." Her concern was as hollow as ever, and I felt my jaw tighten, though I kept my expression neutral. "I'm fine, Laura," I said, my voice steady. "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you all sit down?" Mark mumbled a quiet hello, his eyes fixed on the floor as he took a seat at the far end of the table. I watched him for a moment, hoping, foolishly perhaps, that he might say something, anything, to break the tension. But he didn't. He never did. Dinner was a tense affair, the clink of silverware against plates the only sound for long stretches. Timothy barely looked at me, his attention on his phone as he scrolled through messages with a furrowed brow. Laura made small talk about the weather and some trivial gossip from town, but her words felt like filler, a distraction from the undercurrent of unease that pulsed between us. I ate slowly, my mind racing with how to broach the subject of the house, of their betrayal. I wanted to confront them, to lay everything bare, but I knew I had to be strategic. A direct attack would only make them defensive, and I needed them to reveal more of their plans before I showed my hand. It was Timothy who broke the silence, setting his phone down with a sigh as he leaned back in his chair. "So, Mom," he began, his tone deceptively casual. "I've been thinking about the house. It's a lot for you to manage on your own, don't you think? All these repairs, the upkeep. It's too much. Laura and I were talking, and we think it might be time to consider other options." My heart thudded in my chest, but I kept my face impassive, taking a sip of water to steady myself. "Other options?" I repeated, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "What exactly do you mean, Timothy?" He exchanged a quick glance with Laura, a silent signal that told me they'd rehearsed this. Laura leaned forward, her smile softening as if to cushion the blow. "What Tim means is that we're worried about you, Mom. This place is so big, and it's falling apart in places. We just think it might be better, safer, for you to move somewhere smaller, somewhere easier to handle. Maybe an assisted living place or a nice little apartment closer to us. And the house, well, we could sell it. Use the money to make sure you're taken care of." There it was, the proposal I'd dreaded, laid out with a veneer of concern that didn't fool me for a second. My grip on my fork tightened, but I forced myself to remain composed. "Sell the house," I said slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "And what happens to the memories here? The history? This isn't just a building, Laura. It's our family. It's everything I've fought to keep together since your father died." Timothy rolled his eyes, a gesture so dismissive it made my blood boil. "Come on, Mom. Don't be so sentimental. It's just a house. And frankly, you're not in a position to keep fighting for anything. You can barely keep track of what day it is. Let us handle this. It's for your own good." The room seemed to shrink around me, their words pressing in like walls closing tight. I glanced at Mark, a flicker of hope igniting as I searched his face for any sign of support. "Mark," I said, my voice softer now, almost pleading. "You've been part of this family for years. You've seen what this house means to me. Don't you think it's worth preserving?" Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his hands fidgeting with his napkin. For a moment, I thought he might speak up, might finally take a stand. But then he looked away, his shoulders slumping as he muttered, I don't really get involved in this stuff, Margaret. It's between you and them." His words were a final blow, a confirmation of the solitude I'd feared. I was truly alone in this fight, with no one to stand beside me. I turned back to Timothy and Laura, my resolve hardening as I met their expectant gazes. "No," I said, the word cutting through the silence like a blade. "I'm not selling this house. Not now, not ever. This is my home, my legacy, and I won't let you tear it apart just because you think I'm too old to fight for it. You've underestimated me for the last time." Timothy's expression darkened, his jaw tightening as he leaned forward. Don't be ridiculous, Mom. You can't manage this place on your own, and you know it. We're trying to help you, but if you're going to be stubborn, we'll have to take matters into our own hands. I've already got a buyer lined up, and I'm not letting this opportunity slip through our fingers just because you're stuck in the past. His words were the final straw, the indecent proposal that pushed me over the edge. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor as I towered over the table, my hands trembling not with fear, but with fury. "How dare you?" I said, my voice low and steady, each word laced with the weight of years of unspoken pain. "How dare you sit there and talk about selling my home as if I'm already gone? I heard you, Timothy. I heard you and Laura plotting in the kitchen, scheming to take everything from me while I'm still alive. Months, you said. Months of lying to my face, pretending to care, all while you plan to strip me of the one thing I have left. You think I'm weak, that I don't remember your names, that I'm too far gone to notice your betrayal. But I see everything. I've always seen it, even when I stayed quiet." Laura's face paled, her mouth opening as if to protest. But I didn't give her the chance. "And you, Laura," I continued, turning to her with a fire in my eyes I hadn't felt in years. "You smile and pretend to care, but I hear the resentment in every word. You blame me for the life you didn't live, as if I forced you to stay, as if I didn't sacrifice everything to give you and your brother a chance at something better. I raised you alone after your father died, poured my heart into this family, and this is how you repay me, with laughter behind my back, with plans to sell my soul out from under me. I'm ashamed of you both." The room was silent, the air thick with the weight of my words. Timothy's face was a mask of shock and anger, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Laura's eyes glistened with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or humiliation. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt the full force of my own strength, the woman I used to be rising to the surface with a ferocity I thought I'd lost. This was my estallo, the moment I snapped, the moment I refused to be silenced or diminished any longer. "You will not take this house," I said, my voice rising as I pointed a trembling finger at Timothy. "You will not take my dignity. I've changed my will, and neither of you will see a dime of this estate unless you learn what respect means. I've fought for this family my entire life, and I'll fight for it now, even if it means standing against my own children. You thought I was done, but I'm just getting started." Timothy slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room as he stood to face me. "You're making a mistake, Mom," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just cut us out? We'll see about that. I've already started the paperwork to have you declared incompetent. If you won't sign the house over willingly, we'll make sure you don't have a choice." His threat hung in the air, a chilling reminder of just how far he was willing to go. But I didn't flinch. I met his gaze head on, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. "Try it, Timothy," I said, my voice cold as steel. "But know this, I've lived through harder battles than you can imagine. I've buried a husband, raised 2 children alone, and kept this family together when everything seemed to fall apart. If you think a piece of paper or a court can break me, you don't know me at all. This is my home, my story, and I'll defend it until my last breath." Laura stood now, her hands shaking as she reached for me. "Mom, please, let's just talk about this. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just want what's best." "Enough!" I snapped, cutting her off. "I've heard enough of your lies. If you want what's best for me, then start by treating me like a person, not a burden or a paycheck. Until then, I have nothing more to say to either of you." I turned away from them, my chest heaving as I fought to keep my composure. The room felt suffocating, the weight of their betrayal, and my own anger pressing down on me. I walked to the living room, my steps deliberate, and stood by the mantel, my hand resting on a framed photo of George and me on our wedding day. His smile in the picture was a reminder of the love we'd built, the life we'd shared, the dreams we'd had for our children. I wouldn't let that be erased. Not by greed, not by resentment, not by anything. Behind me, I could hear Timothy and Laura whispering furiously to each other, their voices a mix of anger and uncertainty. Mark remained silent, as always, a ghost in the background of this family drama. I knew this wasn't the end. Timothy's threat about declaring me incompetent was a dark cloud on the horizon, a battle I'd have to prepare for. But for now, I'd made my stand. I'd shown them I wasn't the frail, forgetful woman they thought I was. I was Margaret Elizabeth Harper, forged in the heart of the Midwest, tempered by loss and love, and I was far from broken. As I stood there, staring at George's face in the photograph, I felt a quiet strength settle over me. This was only the beginning of the fight, the spark of a rebellion I hadn't known I still had in me. They'd laughed behind my back, mocked my memory, plotted to take everything I held dear, but I'd stayed quiet long enough. Now, I was ready to reclaim my narrative, to protect my legacy, no matter the cost. The storm was here, and I was at its center, unyielding, unbreakable, and unafraid. As I stood by the mantel, my hand resting on the faded frame of George's and my wedding photo, the whispers of Timothy and Laura behind me faded into a dull hum. Their voices, laced with frustration and disbelief, no longer held the power to wound me. I had spoken my truth, unleashed the anger and pain I'd bottled up for far too long, and in that moment, I felt a shift within me. The woman I used to be, the fierce, unyielding Margaret who had weathered storms far greater than this, had resurfaced. But I knew this was far from over. Timothy's threat to have me declared incompetent was a dagger hanging over my head, a reminder that words alone wouldn't protect my home or my dignity. If I was going to win this war, I needed a plan, a strategy to outmaneuver them before they could strike. I turned my gaze from the photo, my mind already racing with the next steps, as I resolved to fight not just with passion, but with precision. The next morning, I woke early, the first light of dawn creeping through the curtains of my bedroom. The house was silent, save for the faint creak of the old floorboards beneath my feet as I made my way to the kitchen. I brewed a pot of coffee, the familiar ritual grounding me as I sat at the table with a notepad and pen. I needed to think like they did, coldly, calculatingly, if I was going to stay ahead of their schemes. Timothy had mentioned paperwork, a buyer, and a plan to declare me incompetent. That meant legal action, and if they were already moving forward, I had to act fast. My first call would be to Henry, my lawyer, to ensure the changes to my will were airtight. But I also needed more than just a revised will. I needed protection, evidence, something to prove I was of sound mind and body, something to stop their plans in their tracks. I scribbled down a list of tasks. Meet with Henry, consult a medical professional for a cognitive evaluation, and gather any proof of their scheming I could find. This wasn't just about defending myself. It was about building a fortress around my legacy. By mid-morning, I was on the phone with Henry again, my voice steady as I outlined the situation. Timothy threatened to have me declared incompetent, Henry, I said, gripping the receiver tightly. He's already started paperwork, or so he claims. I need to know what I'm up against, and I need to make sure they can't touch this house, no matter what they try. Henry's tone was serious, but reassuring. Margaret, if they're pursuing a declaration of incompetence, they'll need medical and legal evidence to back it up. It's not a simple process, and it can take time. But we need to be proactive. I've finalized the changes to your will, and I've included a no-contest clause. If they challenge it, they risk losing any inheritance altogether. I'll also draft a living trust for the house, placing it under your control with specific instructions for after you're gone. That way, even if they try to argue you're not of sound mind now, the trust will stand as a prior decision made with full capacity. But we'll need a current medical evaluation to counter any claims they might make. Do you have a doctor you trust? I thought of Dr. Ellis, a kind older man who'd been my physician for over a decade. He knew my history, my occasional forgetfulness, but also my resilience. Yes, I'll call Dr. Ellis today. I'll get an evaluation, whatever it takes to prove I'm still in control of my faculties. But Henry, there's more. I overheard them talking about a buyer for the house, about closing a deal soon. They've been planning this for months. Is there any way to stop them from forging documents or signing anything in my name? Henry paused, considering. That's a serious accusation, Margaret, and it's possible they're bluffing to scare you. But to be safe, I'll file a notice of intent with the county clerk to flag any property transactions involving your name or the house. It won't stop them outright, but it will create a paper trail and alert us if they try anything. I'll also recommend hiring a private investigator to look into their communications. Emails, texts, anything that might prove they've been conspiring to defraud you. It's a bit unconventional, but if they're as bold as you say, we might catch them in the act. The idea of a private investigator felt like something out of a movie, but I didn't hesitate. Do it, Henry. Whatever it takes. I'm not letting them take my home without a fight. I'll call Dr. Ellis now and set up an appointment. Keep me updated on everything. After hanging up, I felt a surge of purpose. This wasn't just a reaction to their betrayal. It was a calculated counterattack. I called Dr. Ellis's office and scheduled an evaluation for the following day, explaining briefly that I needed documentation of my mental clarity for legal reasons. The receptionist was kind, assuring me they'd fit me in as a priority. With that done, I turned my attention to the house itself. If Timothy and Laura were bold enough to talk about buyers and deals under my roof, they might have left evidence behind. Notes, emails, or even contracts. I spent the afternoon combing through the kitchen and living room, places where they often lingered during their visits. I checked drawers, under cushions, anywhere they might have tucked away a careless piece of paper. In the kitchen, behind a stack of old cookbooks, I found a folded note in Timothy's handwriting. It was brief, just a name, Richardson Realty, and a phone number, along with the words, "Offer pending, close by Novi." My heart sank, but also hardened. This was proof, small as it was, that they weren't just talking, they were acting. I tucked the note into a safe place, a locked drawer in my bedroom, and sat down to think. Confronting them with this scrap of paper wouldn't be enough. I needed more. Something irrefutable. That's where Henry's investigator would come in. But I also knew I couldn't stay in this house, surrounded by the tension and the constant threat of their next move, while the legal pieces fell into place. I needed distance, a chance to breathe and regain perspective. I decided to visit Eleanor for a few days, to stay with her in her cozy home a few streets over. She'd offered countless times, and now I needed her more than ever. Not just as a friend, but as a sanctuary. I packed a small bag, just enough for a short stay, and called her to let her know I was coming. "Margaret, of course you can stay," Eleanor said, her voice warm with concern. "You sound shaken. What's happened now?" "I'll tell you everything when I get there," I replied, my throat tight. I need to get away from this house for a bit. I'm fighting, Eleanor, harder than I have in years, but I can't do it under their shadow. "Come over right now," she insisted. "I've got the guest room ready, and we'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this, you hear me?" Her words were a balm to my weary soul. I hung up, took one last look around the house, my battlefield, and locked the door behind me. The walk to Eleanor's was short, the autumn air crisp against my skin, and with each step, I felt a weight lift, if only slightly. Staying away from the house was tactical, not a retreat. It would give Timothy and Laura space to think I'd back down, perhaps even to grow careless in their plotting. If they thought I was out of the picture, they might reveal more of their plans. And Henry's investigator could catch them in the act. Meanwhile, I'd use the time to fortify my defenses, to ensure that when I returned, I'd be untouchable. Eleanor greeted me at her door with a tight hug, her eyes searching mine for the story I hadn't yet told. We settled in her kitchen with cups of chamomile tea, the warmth of the mug seeping into my hands as I poured out everything: Timothy's threat, the note I'd found, the legal steps I was taking. She listened quietly, her face a mix of anger and admiration. "You're doing the right thing, Margaret," she said when I finished. "They've underestimated you, but they're about to learn just how strong you are. Stay here as long as you need. Let them think they've won for now. It'll make their fall that much harder when you come back swinging." Her words echoed my own thoughts, and over the next few days, I found a strange peace in her home. Away from the constant reminders of betrayal, I could think clearly, plan meticulously. I met with Dr. Ellis, who conducted a thorough cognitive evaluation, and assured me the results would show I was fully capable of managing my own affairs. "You've got some mild memory lapses, Margaret, but nothing that impairs your judgment or decision-making," he said, handing me a sealed report to pass on to Henry. "You're as sharp as ever when it counts. I'll testify to that if it comes down to it." Henry, meanwhile, kept me updated on the legal front. The living trust was finalized, placing the house under my sole control with clear instructions for its future preservation. The notice of intent had been filed with the county clerk, and the private investigator, a discreet man named Carl, had begun digging into Timothy and Laura's communications. Carl's already found some emails between Timothy and a realtor, Henry told me over the phone. They're discussing a potential sale, using language that suggests they're trying to expedite the process without your consent. It's not definitive proof of fraud yet, but it's a start. He's also looking into any public records or filings that might show they've initiated a competency hearing. We'll have a solid case soon. Each update fueled my determination. While I stayed with Eleanor, I avoided contact with Timothy and Laura, letting their calls go to voicemail. I listened to their messages late at night, their tones shifting from irritation to thinly veiled concern. "Mom, where are you?" "We're worried," Laura said in one, her voice dripping with insincerity. Timothy's messages were more direct. "This is ridiculous, Mom. You can't just disappear. We need to talk about the house. Call me back." Their words only confirmed what I suspected. They were rattled by my absence, perhaps even desperate to regain control of the narrative. I didn't respond. Let them stew, I thought. Let them wonder what I was planning. Their desperation would be their undoing. After a week with Eleanor, Henry called with the news I'd been waiting for. "Margaret, we've got it," he said, his voice tinged with triumph. Carl intercepted a series of text messages between Timothy and a lawyer. Not his usual one, but someone specializing in guardianship cases. They're discussing how to fast-track a competency hearing, and Timothy explicitly mentions getting her out of the house before the sale goes through. Combined with the emails about the realtor and the lack of any medical evidence on their side, we've got enough to file a counter-motion for a restraining order and a fraud investigation. I've also got your medical evaluation from Dr. Ellis, which is rock solid. We can prove you're competent, and we can show they've been acting in bad faith. I'm drafting a formal cease and desist letter to be served to both Timothy and Laura, warning them to stop any attempts to sell the property or challenge your capacity. If they push forward, we'll take it to court, and they'll lose. Badly. I felt a wave of relief, but also a steely resolve. This was the document of power I needed, the combination of medical proof, legal filings, and evidence of their deceit. It was time to return home, to face them with the full weight of the law behind me. I thanked Eleanor for her unwavering support, packed my bag, and walked back to my house under a gray November sky. The old Victorian loomed ahead, its peeling paint and sagging porch a testament to the battles it had witnessed. But it was still mine, and I was ready to defend it with everything I had. I didn't announce my return to Timothy or Laura. Instead, I waited. Henry had the cease and desist letters served to them at their respective homes the following day, along with a copy of the medical evaluation and a warning that any further attempts to interfere with my property or personal autonomy would result in legal action for fraud and harassment. I knew they'd come to me once they received the papers. Angry, defensive, perhaps even desperate to salvage their plans. And I was ready for them. They arrived that evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room where I sat waiting. Timothy stormed in first, the letter crumpled in his hand, his face a mask of fury. Laura followed, her expression a mix of shock and fear, her hands clutching her purse as if it could shield her from what was coming. Mark trailed behind, as silent as ever, his eyes darting between us. "What the hell is this, Mom?" Timothy demanded, slamming the letter onto the coffee table. "A cease and desist? Accusations of fraud? You think you can scare us with this nonsense? I told you, we're doing what's best for you, whether you like it or not. You're not in your right mind, and this just proves it. Hiring lawyers, hiding out wherever you've been. We're taking this to court if we have to." I stood slowly, my movements deliberate. my gaze unwavering as I met his eyes. "Go ahead, Timothy," I said, my voice calm but laced with iron. "Take it to court. But know this. I've got a medical evaluation proving I'm fully competent, signed by a doctor who's known me for years. I've got a living trust protecting this house, filed before you even started your little scheme. And I've got evidence, emails, texts, notes in your own handwriting, showing you've been plotting to sell my home out from under me for months. You thought I wouldn't notice, that I was too old, too forgetful to fight back. But I've seen everything, and now the law sees it too. If you push this, you'll lose. Not just the house, not just any claim to my estate, but your reputations. Fraud is a serious charge, and I'm prepared to press it." Laura's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks as she stepped forward. "Mom, please. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We were worried about you, and we thought—" "Stop," I interrupted, my voice cutting through hers. "I've heard enough of your excuses. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about your bank accounts, your own lives, while you laughed at my pain and planned to take everything I've built. I raised you to be better than this, Laura. I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me. I'm not doing this to hurt you, but to protect myself, to protect the memory of the family I thought we were. If you want any part of this legacy, you'll have to earn it, starting with respect. Until then, these letters stand. Step back or face the consequences." Timothy's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. But for the first time, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. He looked at Laura, then at the letter on the table, and I knew he was weighing his options. He wasn't used to losing, but he also wasn't used to me fighting back with such force. Finally, he muttered, "This isn't over," before turning toward the door. Laura hesitated, her tear-streaked face pleading for something I couldn't give. Not yet. She followed him out, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Mark lingered, his gaze finally meeting mine. For a long moment, he said nothing, then cleared his throat awkwardly. "Margaret, I should have said something sooner. I saw how they treated you, how they talked, and I didn't want to get in the middle. That was wrong. I'm sorry. If there's anything I can do to help, to make this right, I will." His words caught me off guard. A flicker of hope in the darkness of this fight. I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. "Thank you, Mark," I said softly. "I appreciate that. For now, just be there for Laura. Help her see that this isn't the way. That's a start." He nodded, a small, sad smile crossing his lips before he turned to leave. As the door closed behind them, I felt the weight of the confrontation settle over me, but it was a weight of victory, not burden. I had faced them with the full force of the law and my own resolve, and they had backed down, at least for now. The house was still mine, my dignity intact, my legacy protected. I knew Timothy might try again, might look for loopholes or new angles, but I was ready. I had my document of power, the legal filings, the medical proof, the evidence of their deceit, and I had allies in Henry, Dr. Ellis, and even, perhaps, Mark. The battle wasn't over, but this round was mine. In the days that followed, I found a quiet rhythm in the house, a peace I hadn't felt in months. I spent long hours in the garden, tending to the roses with a tenderness that felt like a reconnection to my past, to the woman I'd always been beneath the pain and betrayal. One crisp afternoon, as I knelt in the dirt, pruning away dead petals, I whispered to the roses as I always did. "We did it," I said, a smile tugging at my lips. "We protected our home. George would be proud, wouldn't he?" The roses didn't answer, of course, but their vibrant blooms seemed to glow in the fading light, a symbol of resilience, of beauty forged through struggle. I stood, brushing the soil from my hands, and looked at the house, my sanctuary, my battlefield, my heart. It stood tall despite its age, just as I did, a testament to everything I'd fought for. As I walked back inside, the weight of the past month seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet strength. I had reclaimed my narrative, defended my dignity, and shown my children that I was far from the frail, forgetful woman they'd mocked. There was still healing to be done, still bridges to rebuild if Timothy and Laura ever chose to seek forgiveness. But that was their journey now, not mine. I had done my part, fought my fight, and emerged unbroken. And so, as I sit here now, reflecting on the storm that swept through my life, I'm reminded that justice, even when it comes late, can be a powerful force. If my story has touched you, if it's made you think about the battles fought in silence, the strength hidden beneath age or frailty, then I've done something right. Leave a like if you felt this journey with me. And I want to hear from you in the comments. How far would you go to protect your legacy, your dignity, when it's your own family standing against you? Have you faced a betrayal like this? And how did you find the strength to fight back? Share your stories. I'm listening. And of course, subscribe for more tales of resilience and redemption. Until next time, hold tight to what matters most.